Hi, I'm Jewel. In this space, we take a second look at the experiences that shape us and uncover the lessons they have to teach us, because every experience holds a lesson and every lesson is a gem. So come, walk a little further down the road with me. This is Gems for Your Journey. Today's story comes from a moment in my life that stayed with me far longer than I expected. At the time, it felt like just another experience. But looking back now, I realize it quietly shaped the way I saw myself and the way I spoke to myself. This is actually the first full story I ever wrote about my childhood, and honestly, I didn't know it was in me. And before anyone asks, yes, this is a true story. All of my stories are about things I've actually experienced. You'll notice that most of the time I don't use names because honestly, it doesn't really matter who the people are. What matters is what the experience reveals, what it teaches, what God was showing me through it all. When people describe me to me, it often feels like they're talking about another person. Most people don't know what I've been through. They've met me in a different environment, different roles, different seasons, and naturally they associate who I am with the version of me they encountered there. But I'll say this: it is by God's grace alone that I am the person that I am today. And when you finish hearing this first of many stories, I think you'll understand exactly what I mean. This moment took place during a season of my life when everything had changed. After losing my mother at the age of 5, I was sent to live with family in a place that never quite felt like home. I was still trying to make sense of that loss, still adjusting, still searching for where I belonged. And it was in that place, already carrying more than I even understood, that this moment happened. Let me take you back. I hated that house. I carried this quiet hope that after living there for so many years, it might eventually feel like home, but it never did. It was just another day in that tiny white house on Cayuga Street. Cayuga, Onondaga, Ypsilanti. Michigan sure did have some funny names, but nothing about this place felt funny to me. I missed the Bronx, the people, the noise, the color, the life. That world felt far away now, like a memory I wasn't sure I was allowed to keep. This place dulled my senses. No more music blasting, people talking, horns honking, or trains pulling in and out of the subway stations. No warmth. There were no blocks here, only streets. No noise, only sound. No comfort, only emotions I didn't yet know how to name. I survived by escaping into my imagination. Books became my doorways. Fairy tales became my refuge. In my mind, I was the princess. My uncle was the wise and gentle sage. Our dogs, Duchess and Ginger, were my loyal animal companions. My cousin's roles shifted depending on the day, from trusted friend to evil stepsister. And my mother's sister, well, she was always the evil queen. In my stories, I controlled the narrative. I decided who won and who lost. What I could not control was the real world, a world where I always seemed to lose. On this particular day, the evil queen would deploy a new weapon, one whose wounds would echo for years to come. Her house felt like a castle, cold, unwelcoming, fortified. Silver foil shaped like a U hung above the door to ward off spirits and bring luck. Steep steps covered in worn brown carpet snaked its way into the living room, acting as the foundation for large burgundy velvet furniture. It sat heavy beneath silver blinds that filtered out more light than they let in. Her Bible, which she never read, lay open on the table in the corner, permanently turned to Psalm 91, garlic cloves pressed into its pages. Protection, she said. Light from the window at the opposite end of the room attempted to reach through small cracks between its blinds and nourish the many houseplants, the only signs of life in the dreary old space. The last piece of furniture, a matching velvet chair, sat beneath a large silver mirror mounted on the wall. "Jew!" she called. I hated the way she said my name. "Jew!" she called again. I reluctantly entered the living room. Her posture was different that day. She didn't appear ready to grab or strike me. She was calm, intentional. I knew something was coming. "Didn't you hear me calling you?" There she stood, about 5'7", with a medium frame. She was not much taller than me in stature, but her intimidation made me feel like she was towering over me. An auburn jerry curl crowned her seemingly always angry face, and she looked at me with evil intent through her cold eyes. "Come stand in front of the mirror," she commanded. I obeyed. She stood behind me. "Look in the mirror," she said, "and repeat after me." I didn't want to lift my head, but when I did, I saw her eyes behind mine. "Say, I am ugly." I looked down, ignoring her command. She repeated it, calm and steady. "Say, I am ugly." With my eyes on the carpet, I could feel her anger rising as she took a step toward me. "I don't want to say that," I replied. "I said, look in that mirror and say, I'm ugly," she yelled. I began to cry and shake my head, and then, boom, the first blow to the back of my body. "Say it," she screamed. I still refused, earning blows to the back of my head, side of my face, and more to my body. I give up, I thought. I don't want to say it, but she's right, and so are the kids at school. Just look at me. I felt helpless and defeated. With hot tears running down my bruised face, I erected my battered body, looked in the mirror, and what I saw confirmed what they all said. Through trembling lips, I whispered, "I'm ugly." "Say it again," she said. "I am ugly," I said with more confidence. "Say I'm stupid," she commanded. To her approval, I repeated what she said. Satisfied with my brokenness, she walked away. Although I walked away from the mirror that day, the moment did not release me. It stayed with me, not just as a memory, but as a weight I carried quietly. For years, I didn't just remember what happened, I relived it in subtle ways, in the way I avoided mirrors, in the way I hesitated before speaking, in the way I questioned whether I would be seen as not enough before I ever tried. What happened in that room didn't just hurt me in the moment. It introduced a voice that didn't belong to me, but eventually started sounding like it did. And that was the hard part, because over time it became difficult to separate what was said to me from what I began to say to myself. As a young girl, being told I was stupid was actually difficult for me to believe. Not because I was prideful. It was difficult because there was evidence around me that contradicted the lie. I was in gifted programs, at the top of my class, winning academic awards, receiving medals, being praised by my teachers for my intellect. So even when hurtful words were spoken over me, I had other evidence to consider. But ugly, that lie was easier to believe, because there was far less evidence around me pushing back against it. I was tall and skinny with what had been described as a long face. I wore braces, and honestly, I couldn't even see very well, but I avoided telling anyone as long as I could because I didn't want to add glasses to the situation. And I never developed what I guess some people considered the stereotypical Black girl body. I had no hips, no curves, no bubble booty, and the boys, they were ruthless. "Roses are red, violets are black. Why is your chest as flat as your back?" I still remember them surrounding me in a circle singing that terrible song. And the wild part is, kids can laugh at something for a few seconds while the person being laughed at carries it for years. I rarely followed trends, even though my family could afford them. I liked unusual things. I went through a brooch phase in elementary school, a vest phase in junior high, and I loved men's fashion, especially three-piece suits from the 30s and 40s, though I wasn't allowed to wear them, of course. I didn't look like the girls on television or the it girls in the movies I watched, And I didn't have people at home consistently speaking into me that I was beautiful either. So when the enemy introduced the lie that I was unattractive, it felt believable. And what do you do when a lie seems to be supported by your experiences? That's the dangerous part. Because once a lie finds agreement, it doesn't need to be forced anymore. It just needs to be repeated. The blows eventually stopped. That room was left behind. That house was no longer a part of my life. But the agreement I made in that mirror, that's what followed me. It showed up in my thoughts. It echoed in my decisions. It shaped how I saw myself long after the moment had passed. And the truth is, the hardest battles I fought were not with her. They were within me. Because for a long time, I did the repeating. It took me years to understand what was really happening at that moment. In retrospect, the evil queen understood something I hadn't yet realized, something the enemy has always understood. She could have just settled for calling me names, as she always did, but that wasn't enough. She did not need to destroy me, only to weaken me. I couldn't just hear the words or feel their impact. She needed me to declare them with my own voice. She needed me to agree. My name, Jewel, means precious stone. In New York, I was raised with a quiet but steady sense of worth. I didn't believe I was better than anyone else, but I also didn't believe I was less. That confidence, however small, was a threat. So the enemy's strategy was not to confront me with a lie I would immediately reject. It was to lead me into agreement with a version of myself that felt believable, especially in pain. Spiritual warfare is rarely loud at first. It's subtle. It begins with suggestion, repetition, and pressure until a false conclusion feels like the truth. And once I spoke those words out loud, once I agreed with them, I handed authority over my self image to a lie. One definition of power is the ability to influence. Authority, however, is the right to rule. I learned there is power in what others say about you, but there is authority in what you say to yourself. When I repeated the evil queen's words in the mirror, I wasn't just obeying her. I was authorizing a false identity. I began to see myself through her eyes instead of God's. Lies spoken over you can hurt. Lies spoken by you can shape your life. Scripture says, death and life are in the power of the tongue in Proverbs 18:21. What it does not say is that death and life are in the power of other people's tongues alone. Your agreement is the doorway. Years later, I came across a quote by author and illustrator Emily McDowell that put words to what I had lived through. She says, "You are also not lost. Your true self is right there, buried under cultural conditioning, other people's opinions, and inaccurate conclusions you drew as a kid that became your beliefs about who you are." Wow, that's exactly what the enemy used the evil queen to try to do. She didn't erase me, she buried me. Under her opinion, under her pain, under a conclusion I drew as a child that said, this must be who I am. But buried things are not gone. They are waiting to be uncovered. Emily goes on to say, finding yourself is actually returning to yourself. An unlearning, an excavation, a remembering who you were before the world got its hands on you. I just needed to unlearn and remember. While teaching at a kids' summer camp, I split the students into two groups. Each group received the same 25-piece jigsaw puzzle. One group got the boxed puzzle with the completed picture on the lid. The other only got the puzzle pieces in a Ziploc bag. I would have them race to see who could put theirs together first. The group with the picture always finished first. Why? Because only the ones with the full image knew what it was and what it was meant to be. That made it easier to put together, while the other team fumbled through the pieces trying to figure out what it was. Agreement with the wrong picture doesn't change who you are. It changes how you assemble your life. It took me years to realize this wasn't just a lesson about puzzles. God is the only one who holds our lids. He's the only one who knows what we were meant to look like when all the pieces are in place. He showed me through that experience that I would one day have to choose what I agreed with about myself. I could carry the identity the evil queen tried to hand me. I could accept the labels others repeated. I could even build a life around my own conclusions about who I am. But no matter how loudly they were spoken, none of them were true if they did not come from the one who named me first. Be careful what you agree with about yourself. Be careful what you say to yourself, because agreement gives authority to the story you live by. Remembering that isn't always easy. We live in an age where everyone has a voice, a platform, or a microphone, some loud, some polished, some familiar, some cruel. Opinions move faster than truth now. And if we're not careful, we can spend years agreeing with voices that should have never had authority in our lives to begin with. Identifying God's voice in all that noise can be difficult, but difficult does not mean impossible. It means we slow down. It means we return. It means we stand at the mirror again, not to ask it who we are, but to listen for the one who has always known. Because according to Psalm 139, before anyone ever spoke a word over us, God already knew us. Before criticism, before rejection, before comparison and shame, He was already there. Scripture says, "For it was you who created my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I am fearfully and wonderfully made." And I think sometimes we hear verses like that so often that we stop realizing how personal they really are. Fearfully, wonderfully made, not mass produced, not accidental, not forgotten, not overlooked, known, intentionally formed by God before we ever learned to question our worth. Now, when I stand at the mirror, I no longer wait for broken people, painful experiences, culture, insecurity, or shame to tell me who I am. I let my Creator speak first, and His voice sounds very different from the voices that tried to diminish me. His voice is gentle, it's true, it's consistent. He reminds me that I was already loved before I learned how to hate parts of myself, already chosen before rejection introduced itself, already valuable before anyone tried to convince me otherwise. So I leave you with this, not as a conclusion, but as an invitation. What would change in your life if you stopped agreeing with every voice that wounded you and started agreeing with God? If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. Join the conversation in the comments and share your thoughts. Take a moment to subscribe, follow us, and share it with someone who may need it. And if you have questions, send them to jewel@gemsforyourjourney.com. I may answer or feature it in a future episode. Every one of us is walking a road filled with experiences that shaped us. And when we slow down long enough, we often discover something valuable hidden along the way. A gem. Until next time, keep walking the road and keep looking for gems.